Welcome to the final episode of the tutorial series LLM fine tuning for anti tracking in web browsers. So far, what we have already done is we took a lot of tracker and non tracker data. We took a pre trained LLM, the DistilBERT, and fine tuned it on the basis of our tracking data. And we set up a server where we were able to call this model from the server. In today's session, we are going to develop a fully functional browser extension that will use our server from the previous session to call our machine learning model and detect trackers in real time. So let's get started. Creating a browser extension is a well-defined process. You need to have certain files that need to be in certain folders, they have to have certain names, and you have to follow a specific process. To make things easier for you, the boilerplate code that is available for you from the GitHub repository also contains a predefined browser extension. Let's have a look at how does this look like, and if you want to create something of your own, how you would do that. So there is a folder called as browser-extension in the repository that you have downloaded. We will have a look at it in a minute. And this is where your files for the extension will reside. In general, it has a few files which should always be there, like manifest.json. This is the file that specifies to the Chromium extension what are the configurations that it should use to deploy it. Then there is a background.js file which runs in the background at the beginning of your extension. And here is where we will load our machine learning model so that it's loaded in the beginning upfront and it doesn't have to be loaded every time we visit a page. Then there are a few things that need to happen whenever we interact with the extension. For this, we have a popup.html page and a popup.javascript script. In addition, we also have a specific UI specific page or JavaScript called as popup-ui.js. So manifest.json and background.js should always be there and they should always be named as manifest and background. The other files can be renamed based on whatever you want them to name. In addition, there is also an images folder with some icons. Let's have a look at these files. So we are now at our folder, and here we have this browser-extension folder. We go in there and here are the files which we just spoke about. We have the manifest.json, the background.js, which is a JavaScript file, and then an HTML script, popup.html, and then we have a couple of more scripts for specifying the popup and the popup-ui, which is for the user interface. Let's go further into these files and see what do we have in there. And also more specifically, how is our server being accessed, the one which we deployed in the previous session, and how our machine learning model is being called. Let's start with the manifest.json file. In this file, here some parameters need to be specified. For example, what is the manifest version that we want to work with? The current is 3. Here you can specify the name of your extension. So we have LLM Anti-Tracker by Lumen. And if you want to give some description to the extension, you can provide that. Here you are also specifying that when the program will start, when the extension will start, we need to load the background.js file. This is the file that we have in our folder. And then there are certain actions that have been specified. For example, what is the default pop-up called as? So this is where we will call our popup.html file, again another file which we already have. and then the few icons which we have specified. So we want to give our image an icon, and this is what we are specifying here. So these different icons are representing different resolutions, and the right one will be picked by the right system. Let's have a look further at these images as well. So in this folder, we have the three images, the icon 16.png, icon 48, and icon 128.png, different resolutions for our extension. Continuing with our script, let's have a look at the background.js script. And this is where we are specifying where and how we can access our server. So we are specifying that our API endpoint is the one which we specified in the last session when we were creating our server, that we will have a local host and the port will be 5000. And in order to call the prediction or inferencing for the model, we will call the function predict, and this is what it is representing here as well. If we go further below, these are more functions which are specifying how the extension will interact with the page. We are also specifying for what options do we need to have certain stuff counted under blocked versus allowed. This depends on whether our results are coming to be, if it's a tracker or not. So long story short, we will use our predict function, which was specified when we were creating our app.py, the API. And it's the function that we are using to call our server and our machine learning model. And then we will have the results here, which will be further processed. Next, let's check out the popup.html. And unsurprisingly, there is nothing related to machine learning over here. This really is not surprising because the popup.html is there to create the pop-up which we saw in our initial episode, that, and we will again see this in this one, that when you interact with the extension, there will be a pop-up that will show you how the trackers are being identified. And in this script, in this popup.html script, we are defining the layout of the page, that how many boxes do we want to have, what fonts do we want to have, what font size do we want to have, if we want to display the confidence score, if we want to display the name of the tracker, how should we represent that, if we want to have only one tab, one information, or global information about the throughout history of the extension, those kind of pieces of information are there. So this is mostly designing the pop-up or the front end or the user interface of how things will look like when the user will interact with our extension. You don't need to you don't need to change anything in here. The code has been written in a way so that it will run out of the box, and so that you can really focus on the core part, the machine learning fine-tuning for detection of trackers. Let's put things into practice. So if we go back and look at what is the next step that we need to do, we now need to load the extension in Chromium. This is a Chromium extension, and for that, you need to go to Chrome //extensions, and there you need to enable the developer mode and click on Load Unpacked and select your extension directory, which is browser-extension. So let's do this now. We are now at the browser. We go to the extensions Chrome. Here we need to make sure that the developer mode is on. And then we can load unpacked. Here we are in the LLM anti-track folder, and here we have our browser extension with all the files. We select the browser extension and click select. And here we see our extension as loaded. You can click on the service worker and it will show you if how everything looks like. So here it is able to show you the predict function, which is at the server and which is looking at the port and listening at the port to see if something is sent over. And now you can visit different pages. Before we head over to the browser and try out our extension, just a quick note that the server that we started in the previous session, that is still running, and it has to be running, and it's still listening on the right port, the port 5000, if there is any request coming in. In the previous session, we sent over requests via the curl command, and now we will send over the request via our browser extension. And this needs to be active so that it can receive our request and call the model for inferencing. And now let's head over to the extension. And now we are on our browser, so let's go to a URL that we want to visit. Let's say Wikipedia. And here we call our extension. So we find it under extensions, the LLM anti-tracker, and it tells us that it's a safe page. So it can identify some trackers, but overall, this is a safe page. That is actually awesome. We can also check it out that the trackers that are identified here, you can use the curl command that we saw in the previous session and directly access our model and see that whether these items which are identified as trackers are indeed coming from our browser extension, our machine learning inferencing or not. So here we are able to identify the trackers which are there on the page and overall status of the page. Let's check out another example. Let's say we go to cnn.com and call our extension. And here it is regarding the page as a tracking site, and we can imagine news sites typically have a lot of trackers. And here the trackers on the page are edition.cnn.com and then optimizely.com/public/whatever. So there are elements on the page that are regarded as tracker, and the overall website is also regarded as a tracking site. Again, this is fascinating, isn't it? So what we have done so far is we trained a machine learning model not from scratch. We took a pre-trained LLM, we fine-tuned it, and now we are accessing that fine-tuned model through our browser extension, and we are able to see which parts of the page are representing a tracking URL and which parts of the page are mostly safe. So now you can take it forward from here. What we can do next is go ahead, enable the extension, visit various websites, and check these out. If you want to check out if there are any issues, any problems, you can go ahead, click on the extension icon, inspect pop-up, which we just saw, and you can check console for errors, and you can then fix them. There are further some things that you may want to try out. For example, you may want to change the name of your extension. It's actually very cool sometimes to just do simple changes and be able to see them on the front end side. You may want to change the images instead of simple checkbox. You may want to have your own icon for the extension. Try this out, and most importantly, try out the different websites and see which ones come as a surprise. And if you see there are too many false positives or false negatives, then you know you need to go back to the training and testing phase or even the data generation phase and train your model afresh. Try these out and do let me know how did you find them. And with this, we are at the end of our tutorial series on LLM fine-tuning for anti-tracking for web browsers. I hope you found this tutorial valuable, and I hope you enjoyed fine-tuning the LLM and calling it from a browser extension as much as I did. If you enjoyed this series, you may also find the other short courses on Lumen website as interesting. Do check them out as well. And if you have any questions or interest, feel free to reach out. I wish you all the best and till next time. Bye and have a great day.